They're all trade flying. So they're crushing the base behind us. Trade flying.
Yeah. Okay, I think we should start in a minute.
You know what classes start today?
And so they need somebody to see or make sure
Relax.
correct grade. Water Thomas. Interesting, fascinating process.
Yeah.
Try to remember not to say.
Okay.
They don't progress on the process.
You're right on schedule.
But it was a tiny little town. It was so quiet.
A little battery.
So
Is it now?
Should I record it on my phone?
Huh?
in the Rockies, the place where
Try. I should bring it all.
these colleges like there's a volcano.
It doesn't have that.
How about grizzly bears?
Really?
There's hundreds and hundreds of years.
They like to eat grapes.
Okay, good morning. I'd like to thank everybody for coming. Really, Shalom Aleichem. It's supposed to say Shalom Aleichem, and you don't see somebody really after 3 days, but certainly over the period of time since Yontif, before Yontif, we haven't been together. And as we all know, a lot has happened. When thinking about giving a share this morning, it didn't take long for me to zero in that my head was in where we're at right now, Israel at war, and I felt it would be appropriate to give a share about the topic. Now, I'd like to preface, there might even be some people at home watching the share. In general, war and the ugly side of war is a scary thing, just like with the images that are coming out from Eretz Yisrael. It's something that should be filtered, should be censored, and the person has to know personally what's good for them, what's bad for them. Seemingly also discussions of war could also have, scary effects. And parental discretion is advised. But at the same time, there's a concept, Divrei Torah, not Nizakin. Torah does not damage and Pumfarker. It's just the opposite. We would hope that learning the Halachos and try to understand a Torah perspective of some of these shilas that are coming in right now should be a schus for all the people involved, for the soldiers, for the civilians, for all of us, which, if you didn't realize, Jews are, in danger in all places of the world, not Dafka, only Eretz Yisrael, obviously. Forefront is Eretz Yisrael. But one idea that also hit me in terms of the share, I don't know if I ever gave a share on it yet. During the Holocaust, there's a Rav named Ephraim Oshrei. He was a Litvish Rav, learned, I believe, in Slavatka. He has a son, who I believe is alive today, who's a Hasidish Rav in Brooklyn. But this Ephraim Oshrei was a young Rav at the time of the war, and he got a lot of shilos. Baruch Hashem, he survived the war, and he published, after the Holocaust, the shilos that he had during World War II. The shilos of this Rav, Ephraim Oshrei, were published in multiple volumes of this psalm called Shal Shuvas Miyamakim. Literally, question and answers from the depths, Miyamakim, like we say in Tehillim. And literally, these type of shilos are from the depths, are from the depth of our pain, but at the same time, the depth of our strength. That despite the fact Jews are suffering and experiencing so much pain, the mindset of a Jew is, how do I follow halacha even in these circumstances? And the Kiddush Hashem that existed back then of people during the Holocaust. Literally, they don't know if they're going to live the next moment. But on their minds was, how could I be Mekayim Halacha? To my dying breath, how could I be Mekayim Halacha? Hit me just now as I'm talking. I once saw a very fascinating daher that somebody said. What's the first words that we teach a young child when he's born? Goes to Cheder, first things you learn is Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad. Those are the same words that a Jew is expected to have on his lips. Shas Yitzias Nishmasa, Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad. An entire life, from a child to, we hope, older person, the same word, Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad. Really, when you deal with shilos at such a time, Jews asking shilos, understanding on shilos, wanting to learn Torah, that itself is a big Kiddush Hashem, and I hope today's share will do that. I labeled the share generically Israel Wartime Halachos. I did not put in the title the topics I want to discuss today. And I want to go through 3 different topics. I deliberately left the topics out because they're not for the faint of heart. First topic we're going to talk about is hostages in halacha. Second topic we're going to talk about is dealing with and burying the dead when you can't yet identify the body. And the third topic I'm going to deal with is misidentified bodies, misidentified individuals during the war. Now, the first topic, probably end up spending the most time on, hostages in halacha. What's fascinating about this topic is the halachic sources go all the way back to the time of the Mishnayos. If you look at the top of your sheets, there's a Mishnah, Maseches Gittin, which, now before I read this Mishnah, I should preface really as a Gemara Bava Basra. The Gemara Bava Basra talks about the length that a Jewish community is supposed to go to redeem a hostage, to redeem someone who was kidnapped. For example, the Gemara talks about, let's say there are communal funds that were collected to build a new shul, build a new mikveh. Something that, communal needs. The Gemara brings the tzad that it would be better for a community to forfeit those funds on the new shul building to save a Jewish life. That's how important Pidyon Shvuyim is, rescuing captives. Obviously, if the work would be B'koach Nefesh Docha Shabbos, the person's life is at stake, we would violate Shabbos to save a person. Yes?
Using the money to rescue them but not giving it to the captors. If you give it to the captor, doesn't it really just endanger the entire Jewish community?
Excellent point.
Because you're training them what they need
Yes.
to do if they need something.
So, excellent point. We're going to get there in a moment. But just as an ideal, the ideal is we do everything in our means, physical and financial, what we could do to save captive, to save a Jewish life. Now, as Alan astutely pointed out, ideals always have to be balanced. And the Gemara talks about a takana. The rabbis made a takana in the times of the Mishnah. Ein poldim eshashvuon yos al kadei demeim. We do not redeem captives more than the quote-unquote the going rate. Why? Mebnei tikkun ha'olam. This is a takana that the rabbis made for the benefit of the world, the betterment of the world.
So
The Gemara, goes through Ibailu, Haimnei tikkun ha'olam. That which we talk about is takana Is it mishum duchta ditziburahu? Is it because, look, it's a strain, it's a tremendous burden on a community. A community could have spent years, decades raising money for something, and to give out, if they're going to charge an exorbitant fee to redeem someone who's a hostage, it's a strain on the community. Duchta tzibura. Odoma, the Gemara brings a second tzad, a second idea. As we said. Or do we say no? The reason is because we're afraid if we heed their demands now, you're only encouraging them to do more. And the Gemara explains a nafkamina, a halachic difference between these two answers, is let's say it's not communal funds. There are individuals who are willing to donate the money to save this Jewish hostage. So then the first reason wouldn't apply. If there's individual private funds, it's not communal funds, which are going to these hostage rescues, so then that's not duchta tzibura, it's not a burden on the community. So then you can pay exorbitant fees. But if the reason why we're afraid to pay a high price to redeem a hostage is because you're encouraging these people to do it again, so then even if there's individuals that can afford to pay it, we still would dissuade them and tell them not to do that. Halacha would dictate, would command them not to do that, because you're only encouraging for further hostage situations. So the Gemara has these two tzadim. If you look in the Gemara, always a nice trick, right? Anytime there's a little letter in the lashon of the Gemara, that's a footnote to the Ein Mishpah Ner Mitzvah, which brings the halacha l'maisa. So halacha l'maisa we paskin like the second side of the Gemara. The reason why we say you shouldn't pay exorbitant fees to redeem hostages is because it could lead to future cases. And that's why normally we don't do that. So I'm going to get that in a second. So Pashup Pshat, that means anytime you have a hostage situation where there's a fear that if we heed their demands, it's only going to encourage more, that's not so simple to redeem them. Unfortunately, there are Jewish communities, in South America where hostage taking, happens. Unfortunately, put aside Israel, what we're talking about now, these halachos are scary halachos. Even if a family could afford to redeem their relative, doesn't sound so pasha. Now Tosas does say, I'll qualify a couple of things. Tosas does say, very interestingly, per person to redeem himself, or for a person to redeem his wife, none of these halachos apply. Because when it comes to redeeming yourself, or ishto kigufo, that's different. You can do whatever you want to save yourself. When you're asking others to do it, even a child of a person, that's different. Or a person redeeming themselves, or a wife, which Mamash says halacha ishto kigufo, that's different. But anyone else, not so much. Now there's another Tosos. I didn't put that one in the sheet. There's a lot of extra space in the sheet, so you can insert all the Ramakomas I'm adding. There's another Tosos there in Gittin that makes the following qualification. Very interesting. He says, what's the status of the hostage? How badly are they treating him? Is he going to die from this situation or not? If we don't rescue him, would he die or not? If he would die, Tosos says all bets are off. Then this Gemara doesn't apply. You would be allowed to spend exorbitant money to save him. Now that opinion by Tosos, where the person's life is on the line, you could do whatever it takes to save him, that's not so pashut. The post can debate it fiercely. And I'll quote you one, I'll give the Sefer Knesset Yecheskel, it's Na'achron. He says Tosos must have only been saying his logic on the first side of the Gemara. If the issue is it's a strain on the community, you're right, it's a strain on the community to do something to save hostages. But if you're literally saving a person's life, that's different. But if the issue is an issue, you can encourage future cases, Knesset Yecheskel spells out, then that would not apply even if the person's life is in danger. Because look at what you're doing. You're right, you might save this individual hostage, but how could you save this one hostage where it's setting up for the future other people also falling prey? So that's a very, very delicate issue. It's not pashut. Now,
You say it's a chasapa that they're doing that? You don't know for sure.
oh, it's a very good point, right? What Yaakov just brought up is we don't necessarily know. Like, when the Gemara talks about this idea that you're encouraging the hostage takers to do this in the future, do we know for sure they're going to do that? Very, very good point. You'll see in a moment. Your Sephardi brother made the same point. Now, let's bring this now to, you'll see who I mean, to practically where we're up to right now. Modern day terrorists. Perhaps there's a big difference between what the Gemara is talking about and what we're talking about today. If you take the perspective, the Gemara was dealing with hostage takers, pirates, right? Pirates, they're looking to make a buck, right? Some people make money, in this industry. Pirates made their money, with capturing ships, ransoms. So with pirates, there are these ideas, okay, you're encouraging them to do more. Well, what about terrorists, people that are absolutely evil? They might get concessions and even money from the situations, but is that necessarily a motivating factor for taking hostages? Or is it just a pure terror of it involved?
They want prisoner exchanges.
Right? So that would be a ransom. But even without that, I saw someone sent me a share from Eli Mansour. Very, very well said share. He said, it's clear we never had what the situation we have right now. Maybe ISIS started a little bit, but this is way worse. Is where the enemy went in armed with two things: a gun in their right hand and a smartphone in their left hand. They literally, every step they did, they filmed, and with such rishos, they took the phones of the victims, videoed the atrocities they were doing, and sent it to the victims' families. You can't get more diabolical. The Nazis, Yimach Shemam, with all their thought-out hatred, right? They never documented their killings.
They tried to hide it.
Right?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
They documented it, right, as lists, but they didn't video their torture.
In fact, there were orders they were not supposed to photograph the actions on in the Russian front.
But their actions weren't designed as psychological terror.
Correct.
They were just trying to get rid of them.
Hamas, which is probably halakhically correct, right, that you should refer to them as Yimach Shemam. Hamas, Yimach Shemam, they unfortunately took the Nazi idea a step further, where the psychological warfare, they're taking us hostage every time we watch a video of the atrocities that they do. And therefore, no Jewish person should give in. I have to make sure the first. But no Jewish person should give in to watching or spreading these videos. It's appalling. But modern day terrorists, one could argue, are different than what the Gemara is talking about, because the Gemara's whole second svara, you're encouraging them to do it more, maybe it doesn't apply. Because they would do it anyway. A terrorist who wants the horror would do it anyway. So the fact you're redeeming him, you're not setting the stage, you're not adding to the problem in the future. That's an argument perhaps one can make. And in fact, I found that Rebbe Yashiv, quoted by his son-in-law Yitzhak Zilberstein, says this argument, that nowadays with modern terrorists, the Gemara's halacha l'maisa, you can't necessarily pass them off this Gemara or this Shulchan Aruch because it's worse. You're never encouraging them to do more. They're already motivated to do more. Idach Gisa, I saw that Rebbe Yashiv L'Chudin, the stipler, Chaim Kanievsky, his father, he argues that no, even today with modern terrorists, there still is an element, like brought up, that the more we give into them, the more they're going to do. And the Gemara's takana would still apply nowadays, which would therefore make it harder to negotiate with terrorists. Now, till now, we've been just discussing the concept of hostages in halacha, and the application doesn't apply to modern day terrorists. We have not yet touched upon, we've been assuming till now, we're exchanging the prisoners for money. Well, what happens when the stakes are you're exchanging prisoners for other terrorists? That's potentially worse, because a terrorist, you give back a terrorist, you can do damage. So, Yaakov, this is what you were saying before. So I found Bavaji Yosef wrote a tshuva by the Entebbe incident, where eventually, Baruch Hashem, Israel was zoch, and we should be zoch to that nowadays too. Right. That they were able to go in and rescue the hostages. I believe none other than Netanyahu's brother did die in that raid.
Yeah, one. Yeah,
but
the only one that died.
But the Maisa,
There was a woman in the hospital.
There's some other hostages.
Yeah. But before they went in Entebbe, they actually discussed and debated paying a ransom for those hostages. And the Shaila, I don't know if the Shaila was posed to Ravaja Yosef at that time. I didn't double check that time frame. Was he the chief rabbi at the time? But the Shaila definitely was discussed with him. I don't know that the Israeli government discussed the Shaila with him, but he discussed in halacha about that. And Ravaja said that one could pay a ransom. And his argument was, the hostage's life, we know for certain, is going to be taken if we don't save them. But the future attacks, we don't know for sure. We can assume that to some degree, right? What is it? It's a suffix, maybe it's even some level of a chazaka, but it's not a vadai. So there's a rule in halacha, ein suffix motzi midei vadai. You have a vadai, the hostage is going to die. There's a chance, perhaps even a good chance, that the hostages will do damage. So halacha says follow the certainty. The certainty is the hostage is going to die. That's how you judge it. You judge it with that element. No one says you should look at only part of the picture. Of course, you have to look at the full picture. But if the full picture is this is a vadai and that's a suffix, it's not yet a vadai. So Ravaja Paskin, you could pay ransom to the people. Now I'm going to add one point. My wife told me that she saw that one of the terrorists that they have evidence that played a role in this attack on Shmini Atzeres was a terrorist who was released in the Gilad Shalit's hostage exchange. And that's, now it's tricky. Right now we're Monday morning quarterbacks. I don't know, the Israeli government released them, would you judge that as a vadai they're going to do terror? We would say that. But I don't know, the judgment.
He was part of a group of several hundred Hamas animals that were in prison in
Yeah.
Israel.
Yeah.
It's never one on
These
one.
are very, very, very hard decisions to make, and I never will. You don't want to be in a situation to make such decisions. It's really part of what I want to show from these halachos today is just such a dangerous nature that there are human beings, basar v'dam. Obviously, HaKadosh Baruch Hu is pulling the strings, but there are basar v'dam. There are human beings, whether it's the Israeli government or perhaps some shadows we see are being passed on to Rabbanim. I don't know how human beings sleep at night making such decisions. They're so scary. And you're literally playing with lives. Yes.
If you're going to, with Rabbi Yehuda Yosef, if you're going to say in certainty one's going to be killed and the other is just a possibility, you could argue that it's a certainty that they're going to kidnap more. And
Right.
even if you say it's a certainty someone's going to be killed, you never know. They may say they're going to kill him. In the end, they may not.
Right.
You grab their family members. You grab their. You grab the family members of the terrorists and you put a gun to their head. You say,
Right. So it's very not partial.
You never know with certainty.
You're right.
No.
Now hold on one second. I want to take one point. I feel bad. Really, this topic itself deserves its own share, but I really wanted to. I wanted to cover more topics, but I also didn't want to spend too much time on any one person topic. Let me just add a point. It was a very interesting thing. 1970, there were the Dorsen airport hijackings, where basically the Palestinians, yet again, hijacked multiple planes, brought them all to 3 of them in Jordan, other spot. On one of the planes was none other than Rabbi Yitzhak Hutner, the Rosh Hashiva of Chaim Berlin, one of the greatest Gedolim in America at the time. He was on the flight. I know other people on that flight. His wife, I'm not sure his wife, his wife was alive. His daughter, his son-in-law, 2 of his Talmidim, and there were major shilos. And there was a Gevir who was ready to put up the money to rescue Rav Hutner. And the shiloh went to Rabbi Yaakov Kamenetsky. It's interesting. This is found. Herschel Schachter has a sefer Be'ikvei Hatzon. That's where this is found in print. It didn't make it to Rabbi Yaakov's chuvas. But they asked Rabbi Yaakov Shiloh what to do, and Rabbi Yaakov says you can't. And he didn't. Well, the quote that I had, it wasn't Dafin saying this Gemara didn't apply, but he was arguing the following argument: that at war, the way you fight is by fighting back. You don't give in to these hostages; you fight them. Which, Lamaisa, practically is what the Israeli government is doing right now. They're going with Rabbi Yaakov's psak. It should be Rabbi Yitzchak. But Lamaisa, you're at war, they're your enemies. You have to defeat them. You have to do everything you can. And Be'ezus Hashem, we can try to save as many hostages as possible. But it's a very, very, very dangerous situation. I'll take 2 quick comments, then I want to get to the next point. Yes?
So at what point does, in terms of, well, by paying the ransom, will this cause them to do this again? Or by whatever action or inactions we take, will this clearly precipitate something else happening in the future? At what point does it go from speculation to, like here with
Yes.
Israel, there's a whole history to say this is Vadai?
Yes, so the question that was asked, one more, is, Lamaisa, how do you judge these things? Very, very tricky. How do you judge what's going to cause in the future such a thing? See, that's really why I myself say, like, we're not the ones to judge it. It's easy for us, from our vantage point. Obviously the army, government that knows the most statistics and knows the most, has all the criminal reports, knows the people. They're obviously the best people to judge the facts on the ground. But then again, the halachic factors involved are very dangerous. And you're right, I would not, this is so delicate. It gives us a new appreciation, Rabbosai, when we daven for the war. Think about how many things we have to daven for. We have to daven that everybody involved in making decisions to get siyata d'shmaya to make the right decisions, because it's so hard to get these things right.
The right decision might not necessarily be the best emotion.
It's very, very hard.
How does the rescuing hostages play in with the fact that you may live some other lives instead?
Correct. So this I didn't see beferish inside, so I'm speaking on myself. Israel has two objectives. The first and foremost objective is to protect the people, the people that live in Eretz Yisrael. Protect the Jews in Eretz Yisrael. That's why the first and foremost going to war. Their second objective is obviously to save as many Jewish lives as they can to bring back these hostages. But they understand that they can't have the second perspective, second goal, override their first goal. They have to, you can rescue the hostages, but you have to make sure they don't do this again. That's really this whole Gemara. You can do whatever you can, and you're right, putting lives at stake to rescue another Jew. Yeah, that's something we try to do, but this is what we're doing right now is rescuing the Jews that not yet.
It's a question of how you define some common fascists.
Yeah.
Is it one person, a couple of people,
This
or a
is-
whole
You're
community?
going in as a rescue hostage.
Now, let me pause from this discussion, which unfortunately, needs more. Hopefully, it should be zochet to something like Entebbe. But I'll bring you a second shaila, a sad shaila that I saw this week. I was not zochet to see the tshuva, but I heard of the shaila. Because unfortunately, some of these bodies, by the time that Zaka, who are Moser Nefesh, emotionally, these Haredim that go and bury every part of the Jewish body, they're tremendous heroes. In some ways, what they're seeing is more gruesome than what a soldier is seeing. In some ways, the soldiers are first some of these houses, but what Zaka is doing is amazing, amazing work. And unfortunately, there are situations already where the bodies are unidentifiable. They were burnt alive. They can't identify the bodies. So Shiloh was asked to Rabbi Yitzchak Yosef, Chief Sephardic Rav, should they put these bodies in a grave and they'll work with the DNA understanding, evidence, which might take some time until they bury it, to find out who they are, and then they'll give them their own identifiable kever. Or do you wait, which can take some time? We know normally halacha is we do everything we can to swiftly bury a Jewish body.
But that's only for covered. It's not covered.
That's for covered on mace.
It's not covered, not that
Oh. So Rabbi Yitzchak Yosef paskin that you should wait until you're able to identify the body to bury it. Because a very good story. That covered on mace dictates normally that you do it as quickly as possible. But the overriding factor of covered on mace to identify who you're burying takes precedence. So even if that means, unfortunately, the body is sitting there for some time until you're able to identify it, that's the right thing to do. That's what we have to do in halacha. We have to identify a body before you don't just put it into a mass grave.
Just one point
Yes.
of information, when you're doing a tahara, the very first thing you do is you start off by addressing the name of the mace, that we're doing this on your behalf as a kavod achron. At the very end, we're asking mechila in case we didn't do something quite coveted. So it's very important, even with a tahara, you have to know who you're
That's
doing this.
fascinating. I'll say this out. We have some people here that are zochet to be from the Chaver Kedisha. And when you do tahara, the process is a personal process. You talk to the mace. So by definition, this whole thing, you have to identify who the person is. Excellent. Now I'll bring you One last Shaila, but this Shaila has a happy ending. There was a person during the Holocaust who his family learned that they passed away, and they wanted to do something. The Eli Nishnos, that person. They want to do something. So they decided to donate, something for a shul. Shul put up a big plaque, Zecher Nishmas, this uncle, this relative, who passed away during the war. The story happened in Eretz Yisrael. Decades later, the nephew who sponsored the plaque is in shul, and she was with somebody. Basically, finds out
Uncle's alive.
that his uncle is alive. How does he know his uncle is alive? Because the person he met and played Jewish geography with is his cousin. He says, "That's my father. My father survived." Beautiful story. For years and years, they thought this person passed away. During the war, post-war, it's so hard to find what people were. Maisa Shahayar of Zilberstein got the Shaila is after, decades later, they found the uncle was alive.
So what exactly was the Shiloh?
The Shaila
He
was,
was the plaque up.
what do you do? Listen, right? The Shaila was, there was money donated to Shul, the Zecher Nishma, somebody who's alive.
Change the plot.
Do you get the money back? Now, I must tell you,
No, you never.
the question was not asked by the donor. The question, the shul itself wanted to know, hey, this person did it like the Zecher Nishmas, he gave tzedakah. But he gave tzedakah mistakenly.
It's the giver's mistake, not the recipient.
Correct.
They wouldn't
Correct.
have the shul if they
Correct.
didn't have the money.
Correct. So really, this Shiloh is not so much a practical Shiloh. The person who gave it, was okay with it. Now, we might discuss, right, he might want it to be taken down.
No, just change it in honor of it.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
But, right, you have to
Cross it out.
change the naming, right? There's a father's name, okay, right. But the question was more theoretical. Halachically, what do you say about such a case? Very interesting case. Baruch Hashem, there was such a case like this. And
Every Jew really
It's
wants
like
to get
the
stuck.
day,
You just need an excuse to get stuck.
okay, interesting.
Now that you're gave it already.
So Zilberstein brings, there's a Gemara in Rosh Hashanah where the Gemara talks about people can give tzedakah with a condition. I'm giving this money on the condition that my relative lives. Or if the relative passes on, right? Right, okay, from this sickness, let's say.
Not from
Just
old
say we all
age.
end up-
So,
Is that sort of like bribing God? Is that the idea? Well, I mean, whatever. I don't.
so there's a concept of a person regretting their tzedakah. Because you gave it all tonight, you only gave it on this condition. Person ends up passing away. That's different. So Zilberstein says this case is different. Because there you at least had a suffix what's going to be with your sick relative. Here there was no suffix. The person was sure that he was alive. Elamai, you found out passed away. So that's not an issue of like a conditional thing and you're regretting it. This is a mistake. If Zilberstein hears at Tzad and Halacha that this was a mistakenly given tzedakah funds. You gave it, you were sure the person passed away. It wasn't even conditional. You were sure.
But you're wrong.
So
Yeah.
he says, obviously, Achim Bal Nefesh, Nirash Yachad Zaluach, you changed the language as was said on the plaque. And
Present the case.
you should thank Hashem. Hodul Hashem ki tov, ki lo l'chazdo. You should thank Hashem.
Yeah, that's what it says.
Yeah.
Hashem came back and
Yes.
gave the guy a giant bracha.
But
His brother alive.
Lamaisa, I want to add one last step. You know, Baruch Hashem, we started off with the hostages, talked about burying bodies which are not identifiable. We finished with the mistaken identity, but this way, Baruch Hashem, in a good way. But there's an interesting story about the Rav Hutner situation where Rav Hutner was kept hostage for weeks and weeks, and the whole Jewish world was frantic. Chazai Hashem, they rescued him. They released him. There was, I don't know exactly the deal, but they released him. And when he came home, they landed in New York. They had a huge crowd come to greet him, together with a band. And I believe it was Ramosha that came there or gave advice there. We should not have the band play. Because granted, we were super excited that Rav Hutner came home. It was a big Yeshua. But there were still, at that time, there were other hostages that were not yet freed. Eventually they did get freed. There are other hostages that were freed. And even our victories, we have to realize there are losses too. And it's so important for everyone to be sensitive and mishtata b'tzara. And here in yeshiva, I'm careful. I try to be. When I talk about the war, there are talmidim in yeshiva whose brothers are on the front. There's one that's in Gaza. There's one that's in Lebanon, bordered by Lebanon. It's a scary thing. And it's so important for people to be sensitive to everyone around them. You don't know the person standing next to you online on the kosher supermarket, what they're going through at night with relatives living in Eretz Yisrael, people serving in the army. It's a scary, dangerous time. And whatever we could do to be mechazik, be an amul chavero, have the sensitivities for others, that's a tremendous schos. I just stand by all of us that we should see as Hashem Yeshua's in our days.
Amen.
Thank you very much.
Imagine there's a very recent bridge.
Hero said yesterday,
Yes.
somebody that's over here.